This is being recorded to the cloud. Part 2 of March 25th, 2024, week 11, R678, Emerging Learning Technologies. It's my distinct pleasure to have with us tonight two people who have been involved in, I would say, a good portion of my research during the past 6 or 7 years. Meina Zhu, who joined my research team in 2015, that's actually 9 years ago, and Zixi Li, who joined a few years ago, coming from Michigan, where she got her master's in information science or informatics, something like that, right, Zixi?
Yes, science of information.
The science of information, even more important. And Meina got her master's at Beijing Normal University. We first met at Beijing Normal when I gave a speech in June 2015. Actually, we met when I interviewed her for the program in February 2015. So I've been working with both of them really a lot on a number of projects. And as these projects have evolved, and boy, I didn't even put my video on, as these projects have evolved, um, there's a greater and greater emphasis on self-directed learning. So tonight we'll be talking quite a bit about SDL, self-directed learning, or SDOL, self-directed online learning, or SDLL, self-directed language learning, or SDPBL, self-directed problem-based learning. I mean, there's all sorts of self-directed learnings alive and well and prominent in many ways, shapes, or forms out there. And we've developed a set of guidelines. Meina and I have developed a set of guidelines, 15 of them for self-directed learning. We'll end with that tonight. Zixi and Meina and I have developed a checklist. Is that 24 item or 25 item? I think it's 24 item checklist for George Mason University, a publication at George Mason University. And maybe when Zixi or Meina are talking, I'll try and draw up that checklist so we can share the checklist with all of you so you can see what we've been working on. Not all the research we cover tonight is going to be on SDL. It's led to SDL. We started looking at MOOCs and open education and the impact it was having. But as we progressed, we saw that SDL was an open niche. And as Meina and I presented a paper or a poster in Toronto right before COVID, it was 2019 in April in Toronto. Everybody was looking at our poster, but only the last slide or only the last piece of paper which had the guidelines for self-directed learning. So I said to Meina, we need to write up this into an article, these guidelines, because everyone's taking their picture of it. And before someone steals the ideas and writes it up, we need to write that up ourselves. So we did, and we've got 2 articles published related to that. So we have several conceptual pieces or overview pieces. We have mostly in the trenches or actual data-driven articles, and we'll summarize some of those for you. Now, we can't summarize all the data in all 7 articles in 1 hour. So we're going to be skimming over some of the key aspects of each article, okay? Just so you're aware of that. We can go into depth on any part of that that you might want us to talk about in greater detail. So feel free to, number 1, interrupt us at any time and ask a question. Number 2, write questions in the chat window. And number 3, go like this. No, I'm just kidding. And say, hey, I've got some ideas here. So Meina and Zixi, before I start, would either of you like to say hello and tell them about your background a little bit so they understand where you're at now and where your interests are?
Okay, so first I want to thanks to Dr. Bonk for inviting me to your class. It's a great honor for me to be here to meet all of you here. As Dr. Bonk mentioned, I'm a graduate from Indiana University. I graduated from 2019, and Dr. Bonk was my advisor. Currently, I'm working as an assistant professor in learning design technology program at Wayne State University. I look forward to this session and together with you and have a conversation with you. Thank you.
And Meina, you know Alicia.
Yeah, we met when she visited IU several years ago.
Nice
Nice
to
to
see
see
you.
you, Alicia.
Here.
Yeah.
the first time of Alicia's visits. So now we have more from China. She's brought her friends with her, you know. And I'm still getting emails from others trying to come. But so Meina's been at Wayne. She is currently going up for tenure, a 1 year early. I don't want to jinx her, but she'll know in 1 month. And hopefully everything so far is so good. So she is my only advisee to ever go up for tenure early. And she's also gotten 3 early career awards, one from AERA, one from the U.S. Distance Learning Association, one from the Online Learning Consortium. And she got an outstanding book award with me in October of this past year from AECT. So we did a book called Transformative Teaching Around the World, which is really short chapters or short stories of teachers who took my Saturday class. I'll teach the Saturday class in the fall. If you've not taken it this coming fall, Sung-hee, you can sit in this fall when you're still here, and Jill can take it from Taiwan. Even Alicia and Lena can from China. So that course we had such success with, we had people from all around the world that we decided to do a book of stories of how people are using the content from 22 countries, 45 stories. And so Meina and I put this together in 2022, it came out. And we were fortunate to get the ACT award this past October. And 1 week later, she got this early career award from the Online Learning Consortium. So she's been very successful. I keep bragging on her how many publications. It's not just publications. She's developed many new courses at Wayne State. She's remodeled and refashioned those courses at Wayne State in mobile learning, in technology integration, in learning experience design, or in things like that. I mean, it's about 6 different courses. I think 1 on gaming, right?
Yeah, I have to say that I would really appreciate my advisor, Dr. Bonk's support all these years. Without Dr. Bonk's support, I couldn't achieve all of this. At Wayne State, as Dr. Bonk mentioned, I have been teaching 6 courses. 4 of the courses were developed by myself.
Why don't you give us the list? Give us a list of those courses.
The first 2 courses I taught was kind of assigned by the department. One is a doctor course. It's Foundation of Learning Design Technology. Another course is using computers in classroom. And currently, I'm repeatedly teaching 4 courses. One course is focusing on user experience design for learning. The second course is focusing on interactive course design. And the third one is related to mobile learning. The fourth one is about game design. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Meina. And again, she's been successful in many ways and volunteering for many service activities within AECT and AERA and other things. So, and also just within the IST department, the graduate students in IST, which Zixi has been involved with, leading it now. So Zixi, you want to tell people about your background a bit before I get started here?
Hi everyone. I think I have met most of you earlier, and I'm Zixi. I'm 4th-year PhD student in the IST program, and I'm going to claim my candidacy at the end of April soon. And I have been very closely working with Meina those years, and with Dr. Bonk and a couple of my colleagues. And most of my study has been in the intersection of educational technology, self-directed learning, and non-formal and informal education. And besides that, I'm a tango dancer, and that's what you will hear soon about my tango research tonight.
So it's interesting. I just thought about this. We have with us 2 people, one who's probably done the most research while she's a graduate student in Zixi, and one who's done the most research in the first 5 years after graduating in Meina. So they've been very good at picking the gaps in the research and thinking about how they can address those gaps. Each of them have had a unique way of doing it. They're, each are different. Each has their own approach, but we're all working together on a couple of these projects that we're going to present tonight. So there might be times that one person's presenting and another person might jump in and talk about it because we're working together on these. We've divided up the slides in some ways, but they're there could be different ways in which we approach this. We did present this set of slides to people in Ethiopia earlier last year. So we had a dry run with folks at Addis Ababa University. These are math educators in Ethiopia, of all things. You never know where the invites are going to come from. You can't say yes to all of them, but you try and do some of them and meet new people along the way. While we're on it, just before I get started, many of the studies I've done in the past decade have been on MOOCs, Massive Open Online Courses. And Meina, along with Anissa Sari and Ying Tang, in particular Meina, were collecting email names of instructors who taught MOOCs, emails, disciplines, all sorts of other things. And we had a database of 3,000 MOOC instructors that we did research on engagement, on instructional design, on cultural sensitivity, on personalization, and other topics. So we were like kids in a candy store asking questions, sending out surveys, and then interviewing folks. So because we had this gigantic database that no one else really had, we could do a lot of research from that database that didn't cost a lot of money. We didn't need big grant money, for instance, to do all that research that we were doing. So just as an aside, many people think you need millions of dollars to have grants before you can do any of these studies. Sometimes you don't. You just have to have good questions. Okay, I should get started here. And let's see if I can call this one up. And you can, Meina, you can see this?
Yes.
Okay. And is the camera going to, can anyone see the cameras going or not? I'm gonna stop this. Yes, we're recording this. Okay, great. Just, I was worried we're not recording this one. Okay. So this is called Self-Direct to Learn, Self-Direct to Live, Exploring Learner Choices, Experiences, and Possibilities in a Self-Directed Learning World. And Meina and Zixi emails are there. And if you don't remember them or memorize them, just write me an email and I will provide that for you. There's a gentleman named Dawal Shah who was working at Stanford, I think, and he developed this MOOC website called Class Central. And Class Central was an accurate website to get the data on the number of MOOCs that were being offered around the world. But that site became outdated because MOOCs have changed to becoming self-paced. So there's not a date in which the MOOCs are offered anymore. They're offered every day in a self-paced format. When MOOCs were first offered and delivered, there was an instructor often behind them. Some were self-paced, some were instructor-centered or delivered, some were what's called connectivist, so that learner-learner kinds of things. Anyways, you can see the growth of MOOCs over the past decade. It's phenomenal because we were in this trend early, just like being in AI early. You can ask a lot of different research questions. The world is your oyster, as the saying might go. 220 million students learning from MOOCs. Other people say MOOCs are dead. Well, they're not dead. They've re-evolved in different formats. Almost 1,000 universities offering MOOCs, almost 20,000 different MOOCs a year, and micro-credentials and so forth. And my colleagues, Dr. Tom Reynolds on the right, Dr. Tom Reeves next to him, Mimi Lee next to him, and Ka Zhang, who works at Wayne State with Meina. We all did a couple of books on MOOCs and open education in 2015, and two in 2015, one in 2020. One called MOOCs and Open Ed in the Global South, one called MOOCs and Open Ed Around the World, and so forth. They're edited books, huge books, because we were looking at things like micro-credentials, people getting upskilled and reskilled through some kind of new credential. And increasingly, people don't want a graduate degree. They don't want a doctorate. They don't want a bachelor's degree. They just want a credential, a micro-credential of some sort. And increasingly, people are utilizing resources like YouTube for learning, or Twitter, or TikTok, or whatever. People are not going to formal educational structures anymore, or they're looking at ChatGPT and how can we help? How can we learn with ChatGPT, like we were talking about in the last hour? What can ChatGPT or Claude or ChatPDF or Microsoft Copilot or Gemini or other tools provide? And my research in the past couple of years with Bell Lee has been looking at online language learning. This is one of the first people we interviewed for our research study, actually, who's teaching in Japan. and this woman teaching in Taiwan, where online language learning is changing a lot of things today, at least in my research. So we look at the lifespan, we look at individuals' educational needs over the lifespan. It's no longer just graduate and professional types of degrees and certificates. There are other avenues to get knowledge and education, like YouTube, like online short courses and so forth. The world's changing. There's new ways to access. There's new ways to engage. There's new ways to customize learning. And I talked about this in week 1, whether it's game-based learning or adventure learning or video-based learning or online and informal and free learning or self-directed and flipped. All sorts of things are happening all around the world that are changing the face of education today. And because all these things are happening all at once, they're not coming sequentially. They're all happening at once, pretty much. All these let's see where there, all 30 different ways are happening, coming at us. It's confusing. And so we need more research on ways in which people are learning. And we need research on self-directed learning. We need more self-directed learners. We got, what, is there 7 billion people on the planet or 8 billion? Zixi, you can look this up. Type in how many people on the planet, and is it 8 billion or 7 billion? Whoa.
7.8.
It's getting close to 8 billion already. Oh my God. So, how many billions of those people have a teacher, don't have a teacher, don't have a school? How are they going to learn? How are they going to get access to education? Can we ramp people up? Can we teach self-directed learning kinds of skills and build their self-confidence and their self-awareness and intrinsic motivation for learning, right? So study number 1, Meina and I and Anissa Sari, who's from Indonesia, who graduated in July and is back in Indonesia. We did a study that got published in Online Learning Journal. Now, what's interesting, every year, Online Learning Journal publishes a special issue in December based on papers presented at AERA, American Educational Research Association, in April. If you get lucky and you submit your paper as possible for that issue, it's streamlined. It happens faster than normal. So Meina and I got in the first year, and we got in 2019. And then this past year, Merve Bastigan and I got in. So I've been in 3 years out of the last 6 in here. So this article is called Instructor Experiences Designing MOOCs in Higher Education, Pedagogical, Resource, and Logistical Considerations and Challenges. And after this slide, Meina will take over, I think. The purpose of this study is to provide some suggestions for future MOOC instructors and instructional designers in higher education by exploring the MOOC design. So instructional design considerations. What are the considerations? What challenges do they face? And how do they address those challenges? Oh. Meina.
So in order to address the research questions, we use the sequential mixed method design. So we use 3 data collection approaches. One is survey interview, and the third is course review. The participants, for survey, there are 143 survey participants, and we interviewed 12 MOOC instructors.
Before I go to the next slide, I'll just mention that none of these articles are in the syllabus. None of the research we're covering tonight are in the syllabus. Okay, so the syllabus is special issues every week on different special. I don't think any of our articles that we're covering tonight are in those. So just we could cover. There's 1,000 articles pretty much every year, and so I wanted to have a couple weeks where I cover my research, not just other people. So last week I talked about ebooks. This week about some of our research. Meina.
So among the 12 interviewees that you may notice from this table, they are from diverse countries like in the US, UK, and the Asian countries like China, India. They are from different subject areas in education, literacy, chemistry, etc. Their courses were offered in different platforms, including Coursera, FutureLearn, edX. Next, please. So for data analysis to increase the trustworthiness of this study, for each research question, we have at least 2 data sources. For the research question one, we have survey questions, interview, and mock review. For the data analysis, we primarily use descriptive statistics for quantitative data. For qualitative data, we use the content analysis. Next, please. Regarding the background, the numbers of MOOCs the instructors has designed based on the survey, most of them, they only design or taught one MOOC courses, as you may see. Only 15 MOOC instructors designed or taught more than 4 courses.
And I taught one, and I had my arm twisted by Blackboard, the company, to do it. And so many of these people probably had their arms twisted to do it too. May not.
That's possible, yeah. So regarding first research question, what are the design considerations when they design MOOCs? Based on our finding, it's primarily focused on learning objectives, assessment, how to assess learners in the large courses, and also the logistic consideration regarding time for designing MOOCs, and also how to engage learners. Next, please. So this is the result from the survey. As you may notice, the first one is the learning objectives of the course. However, few of them really consider source of motivation or learning theory, etc. Next, please. So this is one quote from one instructor from the US. He mentioned how he engaged the students through discussion forum. He said each week he wrote a message that would be the new welcome page for the week. And also he engaged students through videos. For research question 2 regarding the challenges, what we found the top challenge is how to assess learners in large courses and also how to engage students. Time limitation is a logistic challenge for MOOC instructors. The table aligns with the result. As you can see, the top is assessment, engage learners. However, few of them consider about technology support or encourage students to do team collaborations, etc. The interview results, as you can see this quote from one instructor, mentioned, I did not get a course release when I was doing it. It was a side project at the same time. So for MOOC instructors, it's kind of time limitation for them to design and develop the MOOC courses. For the third research question, how do they address these challenges? The top choices are, first is explore other MOOC examples. Second is to seek help from the platform, colleagues, and institutions. So this is a survey result. The top is browsing MOOCs for ideas or seeking help from the platform. Some of them just to read news or attend conferences for MOOCs. And then from this study, we found that time limitation of creating MOOCs was the primary logistic considerations and challenges. The pedagogical factors were primarily related to design consideration and challenges in MOOCs that are similar regarding assessment and engagement.
So now we're on to, yeah, thank you, Meina. So now we're on to study number 2. And I'll just again point out, in the old days, meaning the last time I taught this course 2 years ago, we were, I'll stop the share. In the old days, we had 4 weeks, 3 weeks on MOOCs and 1 week on open education, 4 weeks. This year, we only have next week on MOOCs. And we would normally present all these studies next week, but I have a guest coming in, Samna Du, and so I don't want to step on his toes. So I'm going to give him as much time as possible. That's why we're presenting them this week. Just for those of you who are watching the recording later, these presentations relate more to next week's articles, okay? And also, I deleted, like I said, we had 4 weeks on MOOCs and Open Ed, and some students thought that was too much. I didn't. I thought it was great, because that's my area. But anyways, that's a little backdrop to all of this. There literally are thousands and thousands of articles on MOOCs and open education to pick and choose from. So let me go back to the slides where we're at here, if I can find that one. And there we are. And now Zixi going to help, and Meina's helping too on this study. So we might all jump in here a bit. But in my 2020 book, MOOCs and Open Education in the Global South, we had one chapter from people in Nepal. And those people in Nepal, a teacher and someone from the US Embassy, were giving certificates to kids, teenagers, for learning English from Stanford and Harvard. Nepali kids were learning English through MOOCs from Stanford and Harvard. And they were happy. But then when COVID hit, and all these kids were at home learning not just English, they're learning every thing you could imagine. And so we did a study. We interviewed them. We interviewed their teachers about their learning. And some kids took over 100 MOOCs during COVID. It was a phenomenal study. In my mind, it just had the second study. We have both, one published and one in press, I think. Is that right, Zixi?
This one, as a reference, you can see this one is already in press.
Yes.
So we got accepted by distance education, and the second paper is under review.
And our guest next week is the editor of Distance Education, a little side thing in there. So towards self-directed learning, how do Nepali adolescents learn with MOOCs? And these kids are just amazing. I mean, I don't want to, promote them too much, but their answers they give me for what is self-directed learning, they gave us when Zixi and I asked, how do people self-direct their learning? It was like talking to graduate students, and they were like 12 years old. I mean, literally, it's just phenomenal stuff. So here's the kids holding up their certificates. And if you look on the right-hand side, the woman in the red dress, the gentleman on her other side on her left, and the gentleman on the right, those are the two teachers who wrote the chapter for our book. Because some of these kids we interviewed, and just, I'm very happy to they're getting prepared for college at Motherland Secondary School and at other schools. They formed networks. They had networks for kids. They were sharing across the whole country. One kid's learning, Stanford Introduction to Food and Health as creative thinking, English for journalism, behavioral finance. I mean, nanotechnology, nanosensors. These are like grade 10 students, right? Just going from course to course. That was a male grade 10, 72 MOOCs. Another female, started MOOCing at age 10 years old, learning bacterial genomes, leadership, psychology, how to code, presenting your work for impact. Just amazing, So here's a definition of self-directed learning: a learner's autonomous ability to manage his or her own learning process by perceiving oneself as the source of one's own actions and decisions as a responsibility towards one's own lifelong learning. So taking ownership for learning, right? And this is all based on Garrison's model, which Meina and Zixi and I have been utilizing for the last few years. It involves three parts, a three-part prong: self-management, self-monitoring, and motivation, right? Those three things wrap around self-directed learning. And there's a number of theoretical underpinnings and a number of studies for defining what this is. Motivations for taking MOOCs include increasing knowledge, include accessibility to education, include interacting with others around the world, include exploring, just simple exploring. So we ask these questions: what motivational factors underpin the decisions of these Nepali youth to take classes? What self-monitoring strategies are embedded here, are employed? And how do they overcome the challenges and frustrations along the way? And then what time management techniques do they use? What self-management techniques and what goals do they have, and so forth? Zixi, you want to take over at this point or the next slide?
Whichever.
Okay, I'll do this one. You can after me then. So we interviewed 13 teenagers, kids, and it was early in the morning US time and late at night in Nepal. It was kind of hard to do. And then we had 7 teachers, which we have not published. We need to think about doing that. We've got the 2 studies with the youth, and we're doing semi-structured interviews with them. And you can see the names of the kids, pseudonames, they're not the real names. Male, age 16, 17, English levels listed there, the age in which they started taking MOOCs, and the number that completed. So now, Zixi, want to take over here?
So they use a semantic analysis, and Meina code all the transcript. Firstly, we did 2 individual, and then we compared the codes we have and the theme. Then after we agree on those are the themes, you can see we have and next slide. So regarding for the first finding on the motivation, we found that those kids actually, those adolescent teenagers, they actually are very encouraged by other people in the same learning community, including peers, and some even encouraged by their family on what they continue learn with MOOCs. One of the participants even said because she shared with her family about the excitement of learning something new, and so then keep motivated her to keep mooking. And we also found most of our interviewees have a natural curiosity towards learning. For example, they just feel excited to know more and more, and in the field they didn't know before. And they found out it go beyond what they are learning in classroom that makes them motivated to keep learning with MOOCs. Regarding for self-monitoring, our participants report that they try to think their learning level and try to match it with the level of MOOCs, even though they experience some difficulties because most of the MOOCs are designed for college students. So with their barriers in language as well, English is not their first language. So they encounter difficulties, but they're still trying to learn. As you can see, the participants said, even though the course was not for their level, but they still keep trying and having the community to help them digesting. And in regard of self-management, we found out instead of having a short-term goal, participants tend to have long-term goals as self-growth. As you can see, this participant said she imagined herself to become a public speaker. So that's why motivate her to keep learning and going through MOOCs towards this eternal goal.
Thank you, Zixi. So we've got 2 of the 6 or 7 or 8 studies we're presenting tonight. The third one has to do with Duolingo. And Zixi and I have published 2 articles. Both were published online first. We're still waiting for the official page numbers, but they're available online. They're available from the journal. One in computer-assisted language learning, which is a top-tier journal. It's an what's called Social Science Citation Index journal. Self-directed language learning with Duolingo in an out-of-class context. So we interviewed people who are utilizing Duolingo for various needs, but outside of classroom settings. And the developer of Duolingo is this gentleman there, Louis von Alm, and he is a professor at Carnegie Mellon. But I've heard he's kind of moved away from Carnegie Mellon recently because the company Duolingo has taken off so much. Initially, he built CAPTCHA. CAPTCHA is the tool where you try and type in the letters as you see them. If you match the word, you type them in. It's a security system. I hate it because I can't read the real small words and all. But anyways, he's a really smart guy who I think watched his parents build a chocolate factory in Guatemala or something. He watched how the machines run as a little kid, and he became interested in mathematics and then computer science and other things. Well, Duolingo, he wants to help the world become literate so that people can get jobs. He's really got a humanistic side or a passion to help the learners of the world. I mean, he's not out for the money necessarily. He's out to help people learn. And he built a tool that's freely available. And it's AI-based and AI-backed, which at one point was in 40 languages of 500 million learners. But that was 3 years ago. I imagine it's like 4 times as many now. You can see the languages in which, the countries in which it is impactful in terms of, the English being the most popular language studied in South America is English. The most popular language being studied in Australia is French. The most popular language studied in the US is Spanish. You can see this on the map there. And it has different tools that can help you practice your conversation or respond to test questions or practice your grammar and spelling and syntax kinds of things. It's gamified to some degree. I know that Xixi's learning Spanish. I'll stop here for a second. Zixi, you want to talk about how you might use Duolingo for Spanish?
I actually started with Japanese and Spanish because I do have a need for both language. I found it's really intuitive in the way learning Spanish because Spanish is also commonly studied worldwide. So they have different practice. You can practice speaking and they will record your voice. Sometimes if the pronunciation is not precise, you have to do it again. And they have other types of all kinds of uh, type of questions. For example, let you translate a sentence or type a word and also listen to a word and then type it. So it offers all kinds of um, different type of questions and different modality.
Different types of support, in effect. So it's based on a notion of micro-learning or, small snippets of learning, very goal-oriented, ranging from 20 minutes to 5 minutes a day to 20 minutes a day with, very personalized forms of feedback that can be used. Duolingo applies a gamified or game-based learning kind of format to arouse curiosity, to get you excited, to get on the leaderboard, or get a reward or badges or some kinds of things like that. This study looked at the types of self-directed learning skills that learners can apply when learning outside the classroom. Again, self-directed online language learning. So SDOLL, self-directed online language learning. So learning with technology like Duolingo in an outside of class content class is challenging because there's nobody to prompt you. There's no one to support you. There's a lack of instructor presence. There's a lack of guidance. Now, I'm not sure the degree to which Duolingo has hired educational psychologists to help give them some ideas about guided student learning, guided discovery learning. It demands a much higher degree of self-directed learning awareness and abilities. White suggests that learners need to have a strong independence, autonomy, and control to manage their own learning systems and make decisions. Again, Garrison's model of self-management, self-monitoring, and motivation. So we looked at those three things. And Zixi, you want to take back over here?
Sure. So we recruit participants through different platforms. I posted a link for the survey on Duolingo social. I forgot the name. It's no longer existing. They have a forum. You can post all kinds of questions, and then there are also Facebook page for Duolingo users. And then eventually we recruit 10 interviewees. So they are all from different countries. We have people from Germany, from United States, from China, and they're all learning different language.
And I will say that, like the Nepal study and like the study with Meina with the MOOCs, it's fun to interview people. I mean, it's just fun. I mean, you learn a lot and you get new friends at the end. But it's fascinating interviewing people who are, well, why are you learning Japanese? What is your goal? What are you planning to do with this? And it's eye-opening. It's just great to meet people from around the world. You can see they're from Costa Rica and Germany and Singapore and Indonesia, and here's the number of months or years they've learned and what they're learning. I'm surprised how many want to learn Japanese, just like our ChatGPT studies of YouTubers that I mentioned a few weeks ago. Japanese is very popular. So again, the Garrison model. I'll let you take back over, Zixi, if you want.
Okay, so the first case finding we have is on people report Duolingo as a single learning tool is not enough to master a language. So they have to use other human resource like tutors or friends, some native speakers, or they use other tools to supplement their learning. And as you can see, this person suggests don't use Duolingo as the only resource because it's not enough to master 4 different skill of language.
Yeah, get you here at base level, but you want to be here. You want to be up here, right? So don't rely. It's not the best. It's okay. It can get you a base. It's good enough, but it should be a way to get you started, get your foot in the door, and then go on beyond that, right? So, majority of interviewees stated that the daily life activities are a constraint. Like Meina said earlier with MOOCs, the time factor with the MOOC instructors, time was the biggest impediment of teaching MOOCs. So same here. Anything added to your schedule, hectic schedules, work demands, and personal life, because my schedule can be, I hate the word busy, can be time bound. My plate is full. Sometimes, especially during exam week, I got no time. I got no time. And Zixi?
We also found the self-monitoring process is difficult in terms of there is no set of metrics at that time, because nowadays Duolingo actually improved in terms of aligning their level to the international scale, so people can see which skill level they are, like A1, A2, or whichever. But at that time, people said they have to rely on the feeling of knowing they also evaluate the content by themselves, and also the judgment based on the adequacy of the information available. So
I heard that that Duolingo is being used in place of the TOEFL exam or something like that as an entrance exam to graduate school now. Did you hear about that, Zixi?
I think it's only applied to certain universities and
Right.
schools, not all.
They're trying. He's trying to get it. The owner's trying to get it to be such a useful tool to go beyond, to have it universal. But anyways, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. So as you can see, people said they feel they learned something based on they encounter this language in their daily life, and they can identify some simple French, for example, in the dialogue.
So why are they using
And
it? Culture, travel, brain training, job, school, friends, okay, but culture. They want to go somewhere. That the incentive is to visit. To get and then keep my brain active, right? So sorry, Zixi. They want to go to Europe. They want to go to China. They want to go to Beijing. They want to go to Siberia. They want to go all around the world. They want to take the train to Hamburg and ask a question in German that makes sense, right? People don't want to look dumb. Or they have a neighbor who's coming from another country. They might be you know, from Spain, their next door neighbor, or the neighbor might be from Portugal. And so they learn some language to talk to them and also keep their mind sharp. Sorry. So before we go to the next study, Zixi, you want to add anything?
no, I guess from my own learning with Duolingo, apart from being a researcher, I found out it's really useful when you use another tool as well. I took Spanish class with college student last year. It helped a lot in terms of managing the time and having a person you can ask for feedback.
Any questions so far? Is it clear as mud? You're learning something? A thumbs up if you're learning something so far. Okay. Okay. Only 2 out of 8. Okay.
I'm wondering, did any one of you ever heard about Duolingo can provide a kind of language certificate,
Yeah,
something like the TOEFL scores?
that's what I was saying.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
They're working on that. Some places are accepting it.
Okay, so it's for real. Okay.
It's for real. It's for real. Yeah. Good point, Jill. So this is something you could research too. How is it impacting people's lives, right? There's an open question. How it's streamlining admission to education. People who are looking at admissions offices, which is not my research, but there is a lot of studies on getting people enrolled because people aren't having as many babies as they had in the past. So we want to get people who are, into the college systems. We don't want, we want to encourage higher education, right? Anything else before we go to the next part? Yeah, Risa.
I guess it was 3 years ago, I started to improve my German. I know very little German. I tried to use Duolingo for improving my German, but I didn't find it a good tool for improving German in academic level, you know?
Yep.
Since for being accepted in German institutes, I needed to get C1, as they say, C1, and it was very, very hard. And for me, using Duolingo was not a good experience.
Yes. Again, it's 3 years ago. A lot has changed in 3 years. That's one
Yeah,
thing.
maybe.
That's one thing. Second thing, it is a base tool. It's not for academics yet, but that's the
Yes.
goal. That's the goal, is to make that next jump.
If
And
you are going to improve your, for example, German for traveling to Germany, to go to grocery, to such a purposes, it's okay. But
yeah.
for academic, no, I do not suggest, at least according to my 3 years ago experience, as you say.
Yeah. If you have a visiting scholar from Germany staying with you, that'd be work. That would work. But for enrolling in a German institution,
Yes.
not so much. So
Yes.
yeah.
So
Let me go to the next one here and see if I can. Nope, that's the wrong one. So I grabbed the wrong hand. Let me try this again. There we go. Okay, next study. Investigating South American MOOCs, instructor design supporting self-directed learning. And we'll try and move through this one a little fast if we can here. The problem in South America is there isn't much research on MOOCs and not much scientific data. And my colleague Jaime Sanchez wrote a chapter in my 2020 book about that issue of how many studies exist out there. And what's out there is mostly quantitative in nature. Majority of research is focused on student learning. Recent research indicates that designing MOOCs is a challenge. So we wanted to look at the design of MOOCs. When you have these massive entities, how do you address thousands of students with one course? So successful MOOCs are those that require some self-directed learning skills. As the opportunities to learn from free and open online resources become increasingly common, there's an increased need to understand SDL, to understand self-regulated learning. As we have more and more of these MOOCs in open education, they are different from traditional education. We need to understand them better. So we ask questions: what strategies do MOOC instructors in South America use to facilitate goal setting, to facilitate time management, to facilitate resource management, which is called self-management? What strategies do they use for self-monitoring? What strategies do they use to raise or maintain motivation? And how do they address the challenges that come up? How do they address the frustrations? And what are the frustrations and challenges? What Zixi did is she got emails of instructors. She learned Spanish not just to do this study, but she learned Spanish that helped in this study. She's very committed to this study, very dedicated. I don't think I've ever worked with someone in the past who's learned a language so we could do a study. And so you can see she's worked extremely hard on this study. So I don't want. I'll end in a second, let her take over. But she got so many emails from South America. We had 366 MOOC instructors from South America were identified from Coursera and FutureLearn. And we created a survey in English and Spanish. And, we tried collecting the data. We got 44 survey responses. We got 11 instructors to interview. So yeah, these were the 11 people. You can see, in terms of MOOCs taught, one had taught more than 5, but most only taught 1 or 2 MOOCs. There were males and females from Brazil, Colombia, Chile, and Argentina. And we used Garrison's model, and we created our semi-structured interview protocol. We got the consent of these MOOC instructors, and we asked questions of self-directed learning and open education. What types of support do you receive from your home institutions? Question 2, is there a team facilitating your MOOC design? What do you think is the responsibility of instructors to facilitate SDL? And how do you think the design and delivery of MOOCs can help develop student self-management. Can you please give some examples of designing and developing your MOOC that impacts self-management, self-monitoring, or motivation? Zixi, you want to take over from here?
Yeah, I might just add a couple sentences. This study is inspired by Meina's study, as you heard in the first presentation. And from that study, we identified the gap in South American regions. There are not enough studies, and we want to know, particularly in that area, what kind of needs the instructors have for developing MOOCs in a self-directed manner. And so we have this study. And we, after each interview, we transcribe all the interview and send to the participant for member checking to increase the validity of the study. And we use NVivo to analyze all the data. We found that breaking down a long video, such as 30 minutes video, into shorter interviews, like each of them have 5 minutes, can help students better with manage their time, as well as keep them motivated and engaged. So many instructors mentioned that's a technique they use to support self-management. Instructors said setting goals is regarded as a task for the students to manage instead of their responsibilities as instructors. However, they reflected that writing clear learning objective is very important to facilitate students setting their own goal. They use various features embedded in MOOCs to support self-monitoring, such as reflection questions, progress bars. With the completion, you can say I complete 80% of the course or whatever. And they also have quizzes and peer-to-peer evaluations, as well as forums to increase the possibility for evaluation, self-evaluation.
And you'll see this over and over in all the research, the notion of progress bars and some kind of, ways to evaluate your learning so far and compare it to a standard.
They also said that students can be motivated, more likely to be motivated if they design and integrate interactive elements such as peer-to-peer interactions and pop-out quiz during the interview, and also possibly if some gamification features can be embedded, but it's very limited in the major English-based platform.
So that's the fourth study. And now we're on to study number 5, which again, Zixi's the leader of, and it goes back to her interest in tango dancing that she mentioned earlier, exploring self-directed professional development, SDPD, from tango dance enthusiasts. SDPD is a type of self-directed learning that's performed by instructors. I'll let Zixi take over at this point since she knows this study best. I helped, interviewing these people is just phenomenal. It's a whole lot of fun. I learned about something I know nothing about. I'm not a tango dancer, but I learned a lot.
This topic of SDPD is particularly interesting for me is because in many fields, not all the teachers have adequate PD support from the institutes, such as YouTubers. They can be good teachers, but they are not certified teachers. And so we want to understand how teachers, regardless in formal or non-formal educational system, how do they take the initiative to learn by themselves and improve their PD.
And I'll also point out, Zixi and I have submitted a grant proposal last week to look at SDPD of teachers who are learning about AI or with AI, utilizing AI as a tool for their professional development.
So the inspiration is firstly, as an insider researcher, I'm able to reach to the community and also encourage truth telling. And it's really difficult for learning dance in certain ways because Tango particularly require a high level of improvisation and critical thinking. That's why we chose Tango to fit into the concept that we are trying to investigate. So we interviewed, this study has a really big, extensive research. So we have both teachers and learners, and we can triangulate data with both of them. As you can see, we have most of our participants Tango experience over 10 years.
And we have two papers in review right now on this study. And you can see, again, the dedication that Zixi has to her research topic. She got hundreds of instructor emails so that we could conduct the study. She's brilliant in finding data sources, and so Meina in finding all the MOOC instructors. I mean, if you find the data source, you can do all sorts of studies around it, but sometimes it takes a little creativity and dedication and persistence to access those resources to find potential data sources.
So as you can see, teaching Tango is very challenging, as 70% of our instructors said it's challenging. And for the motivation to improve teaching, most of them have reported that they enjoy teaching. And some of them said they are good at teaching. And the third, and the top three, the other one is I want to foster a community. Learning community is particularly important in the field of adult learning that's outside of formal schooling. We found self-monitoring is really, really difficult because Tango doesn't have the certified programs. And so there is no like certificate such as you complete 200 hours of training, then you become a yoga teacher like that. So they have to base on their critical self-reflection and indirect assessment based on students' feedback.
So I'm going to stop here for a second because I think the last three all involve Meina with me presenting on our MOOC, more recent MOOC research. But before we go to that, you have any questions for Zixi on the Duolingo, the South America, or the Tango studies, or anything else that she's talked about so far? We're covering a lot of territory. As you can see, there's overlap across these studies, yet there are different disciplines, there are different subject pools, different questions in some regards, but we're relying on some of the same base theory from Garrison and others about what self-directed learning is. Some of these are self-directed online learning, some are self-directed face-to-face kinds of learning. Sanghi, you have a question? No? Alicia?
Yeah. So first, I think that self-directed learning is a valuable area of study because it's actually beneficial to students. I just wondering about did your research or have you come across other studies that identify differences in self-directed learning strategies between high school and university students? Because my daughter in high school, my students in university. So I'm quite interested in this part of question. And could you share any insights on adapting self-directed learning approaches for diverse students, like high school students or university students? That's all. Thank you.
I don't see Meina or Zixi. Zixi, go ahead.
Okay, so I think one of the reasons we mostly focus on adults learning in self-directed field is that there usually a distinction between self-directed learning and self-regulated learning. And self-regulated learning is more referred to K-12 education. And also with our contacts, like also research interest, and mostly in the adult learning outside of formal schooling. So I think Dr. Bonk and Meina probably have more to add.
Meina, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's really a great question, and I agree with what Zixi said. In general, in K-12, they use self-regulation, this concept very often. Regarding the difference between students in K-12 or in higher education, the study Zixi and Dr. Bank mentioned the Nibali, that study focused on like K-12. And I think from that study and our study in higher education, similar students in K-12, they need more scaffolding from the teachers or their community, either their families' encouragement. These are the main differences I found from that research and other adult education related research.
So I think what amazed me across all these studies was the level of understanding and self-awareness of the teenagers in Nepal. So because of that, I see less differences between high school and college students than I would have previously expected. But we have not done a study comparing high school and college students. This is anecdotal data I'm giving you based on the interviews we had with young children, 12-year-olds. And from a Piagetian standpoint, they should be able to think in formal operational thinking, and they do, and they did. But so there's an open gap. Alicia, if you want to do a study looking at 7th, 8th, 9th graders compared to seniors in high school, compared to college sophomores and juniors about their self-directed learning skills, and then follow them, observe them, what are they actually doing, and have them speak about what they're doing and do focus groups with those different age groups. That'd be an interesting study. There'd be something there. We've not targeted a developmental psychology study per se. We've not looked at developmental differences. We've not looked at gender differences. We've not looked at SES somewhat. We had some data with our Nepal study looking at, low income and high, but not really. We really haven't looked at urban versus rural, we're just collecting what is happening with a set of students, but we've not compared, which is a good, even to compare those MOOC instructors in South America who might have 10 years experience compared to those that have 2 or 3 years experience. That'd be interesting too. So there's lots that can be done. I'm going to move us on to the next study if I can find it.
Dr. Bonk, can I share my comment?
Yep, sure.
Because I really want to share my comment here. So I should say that congratulations, both Meina and Zixi, on your remarkable achievements in the field of academic field. The academic field is really hard. It's not easy. Through collaboration with Dr. Bonk, it's great. Thank you.
And I see I've got some messages I haven't been checking at all. Sorry if I, so Risa said he agrees on Duolingo. Jill says, good suggestion. Okay, we got a lot of stuff in the chat. Sorry, everybody. I'm trying to get through a number of studies. So we got number 6.
Dr. Bonk,
Yep.
I have another quick comment.
Yep.
I think also to Alicia's question, self-directed learning is rooted in adult education. So it started with someone believed that it's self-directedness is a characteristic of adult learners. And in adult learning life cycles, because they have very different levels of life experience, working experience, and all contribute to the unique individual who they are. So that's why our study on SDL is mainly focused on adults instead of compare it to K-12 studies.
Yeah, appreciate your insights.
I'll go to study number 6. We got 3 more left. This one here is MOOC instructional design to facilitate participants' self-directed learning with Meina and I. The purpose is to inform instructors and instructional designers and MOOC providers of current practices when designing MOOCs. So how do MOOC instructors perceive SDL of the participants? How do MOOC instructors perceive their facilitation of SDL? How do MOOC instructors design, deliver MOOCs to facilitate? What technologies are used? What functions and features of those technologies? In this study, which kind of unfolds from her dissertation project, I believe, and she can confirm that, we have a volunteer sample, 198 instructors, 22 of whom we interviewed. So it's a pretty large interviewing pool. We had, yeah, so was this after your dissertation, or this was your dissertation, Meina?
This was a dissertation.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And there were spin-offs from it. You can see up here in terms of, you know, the country, in terms of the number of courses that they taught, whether it's self-paced or not. So they were coming from the UK, Australia, Paris, you know, France, Belgium, Netherlands, and so forth. Mostly social sciences, some coming from languages and so forth. Research question 1, perceptions of SDL. Majority of MOOC instructors thought that these skills and attributes were not static. So this is the big finding, I think, is that most of the instructors we interviewed, we surveyed, felt like SDL is a trainable thing. It's not a static thing. It's a dynamic thing. So it's an important skill, but don't lose hope. Don't get pessimistic. Get optimistic, because it's a set of skills that can be fostered, can be nourished in some ways. It's not a hard and set trait that one would have. So we can intentionally or unintentionally facilitate SDL. Meina, I'll let you take over at this point.
And so one of the instructors actually, she emphasized the importance of both instructors' facilitation and student self-directed learning skills. She mentioned that so students has a lot of flexibility on how they approach the learning content, but there's still a lot of choice for the learners in learning process. And then regarding the research question 3, the specific strategy to facilitate students' self-directed learning, the first element is how to motivate students. We categorize that into internal motivation and task motivation. To motivate student internal motivation, MOOC instructors, they identify the needs and goals for learning, which Zixi and Dr. Bonk mentioned before. It's important. And task motivation, they use diverse approaches such as interactive learning materials, instant feedback, etc. to motivate learners. Next, please. The second main element is related to self-monitoring. So for self-monitoring, it's mainly related to the cognitive and metacognitive learning. For cognition, the instructors use quizzes and tutorials, etc., to motivate, to facilitate student learning. And regarding metacognitive approaches, MOOC instructor encourage students to reflect on their learning by embedding reflection questions during the video or each learning module. And yeah, go ahead.
As a former educational psychologist, I think this is a very important finding. I just want, you know, looking at the metacognitives, the things you can do to foster metacognition is extremely important, and cognition. Sorry, Meina.
Yeah, I agree. So, so even though it's self-directed learning, they also mentioned the importance of other external feedback to help students self-directed learning from, for example, MOOC instructor feedback, TA's feedback, etc. Next, please. The third element regarding self-directed learning is the self-management. So MOOC instructor help learners with their self-management through enactment of their learning goals. For example, at the beginning of the MOOC courses, they may have asked students to provide their learning goals of this course. Like even though the course have their own course codes, but student can customize and adapt to their individual learning goals. And then regarding time management, you may notice the MOOC courses, they probably provide time frame or progress indicators to help students manage time. So there's a sub-question we asked, which is what are the technology used to support their self-directed learning? They use synchronous communication technologies such as Google Hangout or YouTube Lives. They also adopted asynchronous communication technology like discussion forum used very often, or Flickr or blog, etc. Next, please. So from this study, we found that students' self-directed learning could be changed, and instructors can facilitate students' self-directed learning. There are diverse strategies we found in this study, and also technology play a critical role in facilitating students' self-directed learning. The implications of this study for MOOC instructors and ID, we could build a learning community to motivate learners and inspire their intrinsic motivation and provide a more personalized learning environment. For MOOC providers, they could provide more personalized environment through the platform or learning analytics to support learning and teaching. These are the publications that derived from the study. Next, please.
Well, I also point out these are some of them. I think we've had a couple more since, or derivations thereof. We've been fortunate to get a lot of publications from the MOOC research. And again, two of these, in the middle one, Online Learning Journal, there was a second one from 2018 online. We presented that was the first study we presented. So yeah, we were fortunate to be at the right place at the right time with this. So now we go to a spin-off study from the dissertation and something after a dissertation looking at not just the instructors. So we collected instructor emails and names and disciplines and so forth. But then what about students? So at the end of the MOOC, in some of the MOOCs, we put a link to our survey. So when the student finished the MOOC, they would go to our survey and take our survey. And at the end of that survey, they said, would they like to be interviewed? We asked them, would they like to be interviewed? And many of them said yes. And so Meina and I and one of her graduate students, Sarah Berry, is that right? Did this study, Fostering Self-Directed Learning and so forth. So what motivated students? And again, fascinating to interview some of these people and where they're coming from. Like one, I think, was a refugee in Turkey who had lived in Syria and had learned enough English skills that he could teach English, I think it was. We had one person, I think, in Phoenix area. We had one person in the UK. We had different people in this study. It was just fascinating to hear their life stories a bit. So what motivated them? What strategies did they use to effectively learn from MOOCs? What design and instructional elements help them self-direct their learning? So someone from Yemen, someone from Mexico. I will say, if this is the person I'm thinking, the person from Mexico had the lowest level of English skills. Isn't it right, Meina? That was real difficult to understand. But yeah, we had retired engineers, students, athletes, administrative assistants, Egypt, Netherlands, and so forth. So Jacob, a retired management consultant from the US, expressed his motive behind enrolling. He said, there's no reward. I'm retired. It's just something I do. I get interested in learning about a topic. I have holes in my brain, I have holes in my knowledge. So MOOCs help fill the holes in. So I have holes in my head, right? So it's more of a hobby. It's more of a volition. It's more of a passion for him. Besides educational purposes, some participants enrolled for mid-career change. Sarah received her PhD degree and was between jobs. She selected topics such as anatomy and oncology and biology and neuroscience. And she explained the purpose of taking MOOCs was to acquire knowledge, to help as a medical physicist. I consider my resume when selecting MOOCs, and I chose courses that would fill in the gaps. So the first guy, he said, fill in the gaps in my head. The second person, she said, fill in the gaps in my resume. Okay. So some people say, well, MOOCs don't work. People drop out of MOOCs, right? So we hear this all the time. MOOCs don't work. There's dropout. I look at it as drop-in rates, not drop-out rates. People are learning something to help their lives. Lives are changing even if they don't finish the MOOCs. We're so fixated on finishing. We're so fixated on getting a grade at the end. We're so fixated on scores. We're forgetting about learning. The most important thing about the MOOCs is learning something that would help you in your life. It could be just helping you understand how to raise your children. It could be something as simple as how to fix your hot tub when the battery or something, it needs to be fixed. And we had a couple people early in my research on this was how to order Korean food in a Korean restaurant. It could be something as simple as all that. So, we got to stop this course. It's not as good as a face-to-face course. Well, maybe it's not as good as a face-to-face course. I took correspondence courses and television courses to get into grad school. They were not as good as face-to-face, but if those correspondence courses didn't exist, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be in a cube farm doing accounting work. Okay. So we got to stop thinking about everything's not a course is a course is a course. Everything's not the same. Everything's not equal. There are different reasons for learning this way and different passions and different influences in all of our lives. When you stop learning, Einstein, yes, thanks, Riza, you start dying. Let me go back to the slide. Sorry for the soapbox there, but I just, Sarah brought this out in me. Otherwise, there'd be a period without any contact with my profession. She wants to stay connected to the profession. We'll go to Meina to keep on here. Meina?
Yeah, so we also asked a question regarding their self-directed learning strategies that help them. So students, they consider progress bar to be a good indicator, as we mentioned, like Zixi and Dr. Bonk mentioned before. Next, please. And also note-taking is another strategy used very often. Like Dan mentioned that whatever videos or exercise that I was doing, I was taking notes. Another strategy is to help their self-monitoring is through the quizzes and tests. So Milena, she mentioned that usually there's a test after each week performing it. I can see in which topic I have the biggest gap or I got it well. So this strategy help her with her self-monitoring skills. And then we also asked what are the design elements in the MOOC courses that help with their self-directed learning. So Helen mentioned that the authentic examples, resources, and the visuals that some instructors demonstrated in the course help maintain her curiosity and self-directed learning in the course. So the following are the top 10 strategies to foster self-directed learning in MOOCs that based on the previous study we talked about. We will talk about that later in detail.
So this was our poster in Toronto at AERA in 2019.
19.
Yeah, around when you graduated, right after you graduated, or no, right before you graduated. And everyone was looking at this. So we said, well, let's write something up about this. And 10 ideas became 12, and 12 became 15. So we wrote 15. And then our checklist was 24 items. So here are the 15 items. And we'll have each one will come up individually in here, but you want to foster goal setting. You want to foster time management. You want to foster self-awareness and self-assessment. You want to foster a meta-awareness of your progress, so progress bars and so forth like that, right? And having, points in time where one reflects on their learning. One meta reflects on what they've done and what they have accomplished against what their original goals were. And maybe application exercises, test out, apply your knowledge, how to do something, right? And maybe make it fun, gamify it along the way. These are some of the things that can be done. So Meina will walk us through the 15 different, I'll add in from time to time, Meina, but why don't you take us to the rest of the way? This is the end here.
So this is kind of, as Dr. mentioned, this is the 15 guidelines that we publish. It's kind of a summary of our previous research findings. We give some practical suggestions or guidelines. So we will quickly go through it because you have already learned that in our previous presentations. The first is help them to set learning goals. Like some MOOCs, they have that as you can see from the figure on the left side. Next, please. The second is to, once they have goals, to get plans to schedule that for learning. Next, please. And also, it's important to offer flexible learning timelines in MOOC courses. As you can see in this figure, if you couldn't finish the course on time, you can reset your deadline. And highlight the estimated timeframes can help students with self-management, like in this figure, you can see that they mentioned how long the video is left, how long it will take for each quiz. The number 5 is to embedding tasks and activities to form a learning community. This is the one we interviewed is an instructor from Australia. He created an interactive map so that learners can tap their location and say hi to each other. The 6th is is supplying timely and constructive feedback like automatic assessment quizzes. Next. And crafting visuals showing work progress and task completed. Next, please. And also providing reflection questions as we mentioned before. Designing time-sensitive learning units is also important because it's informal learning. And also making available optional learning materials because learners may have different knowledge levels.
And some want to keep going. They'll learn anything.
Yeah.
They'll just jump in and just, give me more, you know.
And the 12th is creating a structured learning environment, including weekly overviews. This helps learners to well organized in the self-paced learning courses. This one is really to make sure the lectures are recorded with captions added. This is helpful for learners with diverse language background. And inserting application exercises for putting the course materials into practice. This is a programming course.
So students want to know if they know the content, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Whether it's a large section college class or a small one, they want to know if they know it.
The last one is the gamification, as we also mentioned that before. Yeah. Thank you.
So our 2 conceptual overviews, there's now 3, one with George Mason University 2023, On the Trail, Self-Directed Learners, Guidelines and Strategies for Fostering and Enhancing Self-Directed Learning, and so forth. So Zixi and Meina and I thank you for attending this session of our research. That was it 8 studies? Hour and 15 minutes. So that's a lot of studies. I know each week in the past versions of this course, I'd present one of my studies each week. In this course, I've not done that because, again, we're using special issues. I do not have an article in each special issue. So I've had to take a different approach and put all 8 in tonight in here instead of one by one by one by one. Lena's got a comment there. You want to read your comment, Lena?
Hi, yeah. So, Dr. Zhu and Zixi, thank you. And also thank you, Dr. Bonk, to share so many inspiring presentations about the researchers. And I have added a sentence here, especially the part about having data resources allows research from multiple perspectives. This gives me the inspiration because my students in China practice spoken English and complete their assignments using AI-based software after class. And the grading is done by AI, but the tasks are assigned by teachers. Both teachers and students can assess the learning process and data through different portals. So tonight sharing about your researchers give me the idea that I believe I can use this data for further exploration and conduct more researches. I think especially focus on maybe one series of the theoretical framework, but from different perspectives. So your researchers are really very inspiring to me tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lena. Anyone else have a comment before we end? Anyone? We covered a lot. Maybe some people are, Esther has her hand up or she's clapping. You want a comment or a clap?
I'm just clapping. I'm just happy to sit through all these presentations.
And Jennifer was here early. Jennifer, did you have anything to add?
I don't know. I had questions earlier, but I figured I would just So I think the first research you presented about the younger children.
That was the second study. Yeah.
Study.
Yeah.
Were those lessons built into the, so even though it was self-directed, was that built into the school day or was that on top of the school day?
It's a really good question. Zixi, do you remember of it was built into the school day? When it was COVID time, they built it right in. And one of the schools had limited computers, so they had to pair up kids within the computer lab. And some of it was after school programs. Not all of it was after school, but some of those were after school. I think it was a mixed variety. During COVID, they tried all sorts of things, but I think they had limited resources. And so some of them were in very poor schools and got bused or taken to another school at the end of the school day to do these activities. Other kids did them from their homes with the parent support. So that's a good question. What kind of models exist out there to enable these kids to learn? But Zixi, remember, we asked this question.
Yeah, I think for most of the kids, they actually during COVID, because they cannot use school labs, so they have to study at home, and they don't have internet or laptop in the beginning, but their parents support their learning at home, so they actually bring the internet at home, bring the laptop for them to study. And at school, I think it's some people they started earlier before COVID, so they have the computer science lab, and they actually have to schedule time to use it because many people want to use the computer lab. I think one student said they only have six computers in the lab, so they have a whole group of students. They try to schedule the space all together, and they also have some face-to-face workshops of those students. They organize workshops together to share what kind of course they took, MOOCs that's suitable for their age and their level. Yeah.
And they tried to translate some of these courses to bring them down to a lower level. So kids were helping each other understand calculus or whatever the math was. So even though it was written for adults, they tried to create guides for each other, help systems. So that also could be looked at. There could be research on the help structures that wrapped around these MOOCs to enable young kids to learn from them. Mm-hmm. And they were doing it for each other. So we had one paper about the community aspect of this, and both papers, one's in press, and it's the second one in press now. One's published and one's in press.
Yeah, one published online first, and
right.
The second one we talk about specifically about their learning communities, the community of practice with their family, school, and peers, and also some online peers. So that one is in press under Online Learning Journal.
Yeah, one's going to Distance Education's been published online first, and Online Learning Journal's it's in press. It's with Zixi and Meina, it's hard for me because they're so productive and so smart and so enjoyable to work with that I sometimes forget, which paper was that? Please remind me. But we've been blessed with the privilege of and honor of having two of the most productive people in my career in higher education. To have them both with us tonight is really phenomenal. So we should give them a round of applause. And if we can all do like this, I'll get a picture of everybody. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you. Wait, try again. Meina wasn't raise your hand. Try it, Meina. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll see you all now. I need to stop the recording. Stop the recording. Week 11, R678 part 2.